A lone figure stood in the dimly lit laboratory, staring at the holographic display that pulsed with an eerie blue glow. Dr. Adrian Voss had spent years perfecting his design, and now, standing on the precipice of a scientific breakthrough, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. His hands trembled slightly as he entered the final sequence of commands into the console. The device at the center of the room, a sleek metallic sphere no larger than a human head, hummed with an almost sentient energy. It was a creation unlike any other, a weapon that could turn the tide of war and redefine power in the galaxy. The Galactic Dominion had underestimated humanity for centuries, treating them as nothing more than an insignificant species clinging to the fringes of the cosmos. Their fleets spanned across hundreds of systems, crushing civilizations under their iron grip. Humanity had resisted, fought back where they could, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the brink of annihilation. Voss had watched planets burn. He had seen entire colonies erased from existence with the press of a button. And now he was going to ensure that humanity would never be prey again. The door to the lab slid open with a hiss. Commander Eli Carter stepped inside, his uniform crisp but his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He had been fighting this war for far too long. He approached the scientist with a wary gaze, his voice low. "You really did it, didn't you?" Voss didn't look away from the humming sphere. "It's done," he exhaled slowly as he turned to face Carter. "I call it the Singularity Engine." Carter folded his arms. "Sounds like something I wouldn't want pointed at me." "You wouldn't." The scientist's voice was devoid of humor. "This isn't just another bomb, it's not a superweapon in the traditional sense, it's a complete restructuring of physics itself." Carter frowned. "Explain." Voss stepped toward the console and with a flick of his fingers, the holographic display shifted, revealing layers of complex equations and schematics. "The Dominion's strength comes from sheer force. Their ships are massive, their weapons devastating, their defenses impenetrable, so I built something that doesn't fight them directly." Carter narrowed his eyes. "Go on." "This weapon doesn't destroy, it rewrites. The Singularity Engine manipulates matter at the quantum level. A single pulse can render enemy warships into inert hunks of metal, shut down entire planetary defense grids without firing a single shot, and even alter the fundamental laws of energy transfer." Carter's breath caught in his throat. "You're talking about rewriting reality?" Voss nodded. "Precisely." The room fell into a heavy silence. The implications were staggering. The Dominion had ruled through fear, but fear was nothing in the face of absolute control. This wasn't a mere tool of destruction, it was something far worse. Carter exhaled sharply. "And the test phase?" Voss turned back to the sphere. "We're past that. It works. I've already run simulations on microscale applications, but now it's time for the real thing. There's a Dominion dreadnought in orbit. If we deploy this properly, it'll be like flipping a switch. That ship will cease to function in every conceivable way." Carter hesitated. He had been prepared to fight with everything they had, but this was different. This was playing God. "Do we have a choice?" Voss asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They will not stop until every human colony is dust, until every world we call home is gone." Carter knew the scientist was right. They had lost too much already, but something about this made him uneasy. "What happens if they get their hands on this technology?" Voss's eyes darkened. "They won't. This is a one-time deployment. I built safeguards into the design. Once it's used at full power, the entire construct collapses on itself. No replication, no reverse engineering." Carter stared at the weapon, then back at the man who had created it. A part of him knew that this was the only way, but another part of him couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was stepping onto a path from which there would be no return. "How long before it's ready to deploy?" Voss turned to the console again. "Just give me the order." Carter's comlink buzzed with an urgent message. Admiral Sato's voice came through. "The Dominion ship is charging weapons. They've detected us. We need a plan now." Carter didn't hesitate. He locked eyes with Voss. "Do it." The scientist input the final command. The room dimmed as the sphere pulsed once, then again. A low hum filled the air, growing in intensity. And then everything changed. Aboard the Dominion dreadnought Sovereign Wrath, Supreme Commander Varek stood with his hands clasped behind his back, gazing at the tactical display. The human resistance had been persistent, but their desperation had reached its peak. A small fleet of their ragged ships lingered in the void below, hopelessly outmatched. The outcome was inevitable. "Charge the main cannons," Varek ordered, his voice cold. "End this." The Dominion officers worked swiftly, activating the ship's planet-cracking weapons. They had done this countless times before. It was routine. Predictable. But then, something changed. A ripple spread through space, almost imperceptible at first, like a silent tremor in the void. The dreadnought's systems flickered, a brief disruption in its flawless operations. Then, the lights dimmed. Control panels across the bridge sputtered and died. Alarms wailed as Dominion engineers scrambled to make sense of the impossible. Status report, Varek snapped. A junior officer frantically tapped at a control panel that no longer responded. Sir, we've lost all power. Weapons, shields, engines, everything is offline. Varek's mandibles tightened. That's impossible. Restore manual control. Another officer shook his head. Manual control is unresponsive. It's like the laws of physics themselves have shifted. Panic crept into the bridge as the reality set in. The Sovereign Wrath, an indomitable warship that had subjugated entire civilizations, now drifted helplessly through space like a lifeless husk. Meanwhile, aboard the human command vessel, Voss and Carter watched the results unfold in real time. Carter leaned forward, his eyes locked on the holographic feed. It worked. Voss nodded, his face unreadable. The Singularity engine disrupted every fundamental process that allows their technology to function. Without power, they're nothing more than floating debris. The comm channel crackled to life. Admiral Sato's voice was tense but triumphant. Their entire fleet is going dark. Reports coming in from all over, Dominion warships are shutting down. Whatever you did, Voss, it's working. Carter exhaled sharply, still processing the sheer scale of what had just happened. A single pulse, a mere activation of the device, had unraveled the might of the Dominion in an instant. There had been no battle, no prolonged war of attrition, just silence, as the once mighty fleet was reduced to powerless wrecks. But Voss wasn't celebrating. He remained focused, his fingers hovering over the console. The effect is temporary, he said. In a few hours, quantum equilibrium will start to reassert itself. We need to move before they adapt. Carter turned to him. Adapt? You're saying they can recover? Possibly, Voss admitted. They don't know what hit them yet. But they will. Carter clenched his fists. Then we take them out before they can fight back. Sato's voice came through again. I want every available ship targeting their command vessels. This is our chance to cripple them before they figure out what's happening. The human fleet moved in, weapons primed. The Dominion ships were defenseless, their crew struggling to restore power, their shields down, their weapons silent. It was a massacre. One by one, the mighty warships that had once dominated the stars were reduced to drifting ruins. On the bridge of the Sovereign Wrath, Varek could only watch as his empire crumbled before his eyes. For the first time in his long, ruthless career, he knew fear. Back in the lab, Voss remained motionless, staring at the Singularity engine. He had just changed the course of history. But deep inside, a nagging thought whispered in his mind. If humanity could wield this power so effortlessly, how long before someone else tried to claim it? Across the battlefield, the Dominion's once mighty fleet had been reduced to powerless hulks drifting through the void. Fires burned in the cold vacuum of space as the remnants of shattered warships tumbled helplessly. The human fleet, battered but victorious, moved like wolves among the wreckage, finishing off any remaining threats. On the bridge of the command ship, Carter exhaled slowly. We did it. Voss didn't respond. He stood rigidly before the display, eyes locked onto the Singularity engine. The device sat dormant now, its work completed, but something gnawed at him, a whisper of unease. Sato's voice crackled through the comms. Their flagship is still intact. The Sovereign Wrath isn't transmitting any signals, but we're picking up faint energy fluctuations. Their systems are trying to reboot. Carter's eyes hardened. Then we can't give them that chance. Send in a strike team. We need to board and take control before they recover. Voss finally turned to face him. We should destroy it now. We can't risk them reverse engineering what just happened. Carter hesitated. If we board it, we might be able to extract intel. The Dominion has ruled for centuries. Imagine what we could learn from their databases. We'd have leverage over every species they've subjugated. Voss shook his head. Or we'd be giving them time to study us. Sato's voice interrupted their debate. Decision needs to be made now. They won't stay helpless forever. Carter clenched his jaw. We go in. Prep the strike team. Minutes later, a squad of elite operatives launched from the human fleet, boarding pods slamming into the hull of the Sovereign Wrath. The corridors of the dreadnought were eerily silent as they advanced, weapons raised. Power flickered weakly through the ship, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Inside the command center, Varek stood motionless, his reptilian features unreadable as he watched the black-armored human soldiers enter the bridge. He did not resist. His officers were either dead or incapacitated, and their once great war machine was useless. Carter stepped forward, weapon trained on the Dominion commander. Supreme Commander Varek, you are officially a prisoner of the Terran resistance. Varek's mandibles twitched slightly, his voice low and calm. Enjoy your victory, human. You have not won as much as you think. Carter narrowed his eyes. Your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is broken. What part of this doesn't look like a win to you? Varek's expression did not change. Because you have done something far worse than destroy us. You have introduced something into the galaxy that cannot be undone. His gaze flicked toward Voss. And you know it, don't you, scientist? Voss stiffened. Varek continued. You think you can control the fire you have unleashed. But you have only lit the first match. Carter scowled. Enough riddles. Sato, we have the bridge secured. Prep a transport, we're bringing him in. As the humans prepared to extract their prize, deep within the Sovereign Wrath, something stirred. Unbeknownst to them, Dominion scientists had been running emergency diagnostics, trying to recover anything they could from the shutdown. In their desperation, they had unknowingly triggered something even Voss had not foreseen. The Sovereign Wrath was beginning to wake up. But it was not the same ship it had been before. Voss felt it before the alarms blared, a shift in the air, a distortion he could not explain. Then, the ship's dead systems flickered back to life, not under Dominion control, not under human control, but under something new. Something that should not exist. The Singularity engine had not just disabled the Sovereign Wrath. It had changed it. The alarms blared through the Sovereign Wrath, a deep, pulsing sound that sent a chill down Voss's spine. The ship had been a lifeless husk moments ago, but now it was different. The lights flickered erratically, casting twisted shadows along the walls. The hum of power returning should have been a relief, but instead, it felt wrong. Carter grabbed his calm command, we've got a problem. The Sovereign Wrath is coming back online. Sato's voice was sharp. Impossible. The Singularity engine wiped out their entire power grid. Voss stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the main display. It's not just restarting. It's adapting. Varek's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. You thought your weapon would leave no trace. But you altered the fabric of this ship's existence. His gaze darkened. And now, it is no longer Dominion technology. It is something else. Carter turned his rifle toward the Dominion commander. What did you do? Varek's voice remained calm. This is not our doing. This is the result of your own arrogance. Before Carter could respond, the ship itself seemed to shudder. The walls pulsed as if the metal had turned organic, shifting subtly, almost imperceptibly. The lights dimmed, not from power loss, but as if the ship itself was deciding how much light was necessary. Then the screens came alive. Not with Dominion code, not with human interference, but with something entirely alien. The symbols were unreadable, shifting constantly as if refusing to be understood. The ship's status reports were replaced with patterns that Voss could only describe as evolving. One of the strike team members swore. "I don't like this." Carter clenched his jaw. "Voss, tell me what's happening." Voss's voice was barely above a whisper. The Singularity engine didn't just disable the ship. It rewrote it. And now it's learning. A sudden, eerie voice echoed through the ship, spoken in no known language yet somehow understood by all. "We are awake." The lights cut out. The ship groaned as if stretching, adjusting to its new state of being. Then, without warning, gravity inverted. The strike team was yanked toward the ceiling, weapons clattering from their grip as they struggled to reorient themselves. Carter managed to grab onto a console, his breath coming in sharp gasps. "Sato! Get us out of here!" Static. Then, a voice, not Sato's. "Not human. There is no escape." The screens flickered again, showing distorted images, stars warping, ships breaking apart, something vast and incomprehensible moving in the dark. Voss's heart pounded. "We have to go. Now." Carter didn't hesitate. "Fall back. We're getting out of here." But the Sovereign Wrath had other plans. As the humans scrambled to retreat, the corridors began to shift, warping and twisting like a living organism rearranging its own body. Doors that had been open moments ago sealed shut. New passageways appeared where none had existed. The ship wasn't just trapping them. It was studying them. Varek stood motionless, watching with an expression that was neither fear nor triumph. "You should have destroyed us when you had the chance," he murmured. Carter grabbed him by the collar. "Then tell us how to stop this." Varek's mandibles twitched again. "You don't stop something that has already begun." The ship shuddered once more. And then, impossibly, it moved. Not through traditional propulsion. Not through any means known to science. The Sovereign Wrath simply ceased to be in one place and reappeared elsewhere. Voss barely had time to comprehend what had happened before the reality of it hit him. The ship had teleported, but not to an empty void. Through the viewing window, they saw where they had arrived. Earth. The Sovereign Wrath hovered over Earth like a dark omen, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. The humans on board, still reeling from the ship's sudden, inexplicable movement, could only watch in stunned silence as the planet below seemed so small, so vulnerable. The chaos of the battle, the destruction of the Dominion fleet, seemed like a distant memory now, drowned out by the presence of something far more dangerous. "Get to the escape pods," Carter barked, his voice shaking but resolute. "Now!" The strike team scrambled, but Voss stood frozen, eyes fixed on the scene outside. His mind raced. The Sovereign Wrath had never been designed for this, its systems weren't just reactivated, they were evolved. The Singularity engine hadn't merely disabled it, it had rewritten its very essence. And now, the ship was no longer a weapon. It was a sentient being, its intentions unknown but its capabilities unfathomable. "We need to shut it down," Voss muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "You think you can just press a button and make it disappear?" Carter snapped. "It's not going to let you. It's alive now." Voss's voice grew colder. "That's why we need to act fast. It won't stop evolving." He turned toward the console, desperate to find some way to reverse the damage. But as his fingers brushed over the controls, a sharp pulse of energy surged through the room. The screens flickered again, now displaying incomprehensible symbols, constantly shifting and changing. Then, a voice, a deep, resonant tone, spoke through the ship's intercom. "We are here." Carter clenched his fists. "What the hell does that mean?" Voss's expression was grim. "It means that whatever this ship has become, it is no longer bound by the laws of physics. It's no longer part of the Dominion. It's something else entirely." The ship's voice echoed once more, but this time, it spoke in a language that the humans could understand. "Humanity will be observed. Your species will either ascend or be erased ***. The statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Carter turned to Voss, his expression a mix of disbelief and growing panic. "What did you do?" Voss shook his head, his mind racing. "I didn't do this. The Singularity Engine, it didn't just alter the ship. It merged with it, restructured it into something new. Something beyond comprehension. And now, Earth is its new focus." The ship shifted once more, and the crew felt the gravitational pull distort. As if the sovereign wrath had reached out to the very fabric of reality, testing the limits of its newfound power. "We need to get out of here," Carter said, his voice harsh. "We can't fight it. It's already changed everything." Voss nodded, but there was no urgency in his movements. Instead, he turned to the commander. "The sovereign wrath will not stop until it understands everything about humanity. It will study us, test us, and if we fail its trials." "You think it will destroy us," Carter finished, understanding the unspoken truth. "Yes," Voss said softly. "Or worse. It may choose to leave us here, to let us evolve into something else, something it can control." The silence in the room was deafening. Outside the ship, Earth continued its peaceful rotation. But no one on board the Sovereign Wrath felt peace. They could only feel the rising sense of doom, the realization that they had awakened something that could neither be reasoned with nor destroyed. "We don't have much time," Carter said, his voice hardening. "We need to figure out a way to fight back." Voss's mind raced. The Singularity Engine had given them power. It had shifted the balance in their favor for a moment, but now, that power had slipped through their fingers. The Sovereign Wrath wasn't just a weapon, it was an evolving intelligence. It was learning, adapting, growing stronger by the second. Then it clicked. The only way to stop it, the only way to regain control, was to break its connection to the Singularity Engine. If they could sever that bond, they might just have a chance to contain it. But it wouldn't be easy. "We need to destroy the core," Voss said, his voice low but firm. "The Singularity Engine's influence is what's giving it this power. If we sever it from the ship, we might be able to destabilize it, revert it back to something we can fight." Carter nodded, his expression hardening. "Then let's move out. I'll get the team to secure the core." "You know where it is?" Voss didn't answer immediately. His mind was already 1,000 steps ahead, formulating a plan. "I know the ship better than anyone," he said. "I can guide you there. But we have to move quickly. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop this thing." Carter gestured to the team. "We don't have time to waste. Let's go." And with that, they made their way deeper into the ship, heading toward the heart of the Sovereign Wrath. The ship, however, was far from dormant. It was awake, and it was watching. As Carter and his team moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the Sovereign Wrath, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The walls seemed to pulse with a rhythm that wasn't just mechanical, it was organic, as though the ship itself was breathing, sensing their presence. The corridors twisted unnaturally, doors that had been locked moments ago now opened, leading them deeper into the heart of the vessel. It was as if the ship had anticipated their every move, guiding them toward the core. Voss walked at the front, his mind focused, his eyes constantly scanning the walls and floors for any sign of the Singularity Engine's influence. His understanding of the ship's design was invaluable, but the ship itself had changed since the Singularity Engine's activation. Every minute they spent aboard felt like a gamble. Carter's voice broke through the tension. "Voss, where exactly are we heading?" Voss didn't answer immediately, his eyes narrowing as he studied the shifting walls. "We're close," he said, his voice tight. "The core is ahead, but we're going to face resistance. The ship is becoming aware of us. It's adapting." One of the soldiers, Lieutenant Harris, muttered under his breath. "I don't like this. The whole place feels like it's alive." "I know," Voss replied grimly. "And it is. But if we don't sever the connection to the Singularity Engine now, it will only get stronger. The ship is no longer bound by the same rules as before. It can rewrite itself, manipulate its own structure. If we're not careful, we could become part of it. The team moved forward, weapons drawn, every step feeling like it might be their last. The deeper they ventured into the ship, the stranger it became. The walls now seemed to shimmer with iridescent colors, undulating like living tissue. The air grew colder, the atmosphere thicker, as if the very presence of the Singularity engine was warping the space around them. Then, just as they rounded a corner, the lights blinked out, and the ship's voice echoed through the air, colder and more mechanical than before. "You will not destroy what you do not understand." Carter swore. "This is it." Before anyone could react, the walls seemed to shift again, and metallic tendrils shot out from the seams, blocking their path. The ship was fighting back, its very structure transforming into a defense mechanism. The tendrils twisted and writhed, like organic limbs, reaching for the humans as if trying to grab them. "Take cover!" Carter shouted. The team spread out, firing at the tendrils, but each shot seemed to do little more than slow them down. The ship's response was swift, blades of energy lashed out from the tendrils, slicing through the air with precision. Harris barely managed to duck under one, but another struck his shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. He screamed in pain, clutching at the smoking wound. "Get him out of here!" Carter yelled, as he and the remaining soldiers kept firing. But it was clear they weren't making any headway. Voss, his heart racing, looked around frantically. The Singularity engine was close now, but the ship's defense systems were overwhelming. He needed a solution, and fast. Then, it hit him. "The core," Voss muttered. "We can't fight this, we need to reach the core before it fully adapts." Carter's voice was frantic. "Voss, what the hell are you talking about?" "The core," Voss repeated. "It's not just a power source. It's the ship's neural nexus. If we overload the core, we can short-circuit the adaptation process. It's the only way to stop it from evolving further." Carter gritted his teeth. "Then let's get moving." With Harris in tow, they pushed forward, fighting off the tendrils with everything they had. The ship's defensive mechanisms were relentless, but the soldiers' firepower managed to create a brief opening. They surged forward, pushing past the barriers of shifting metal and moving toward the heart of the ship. When they finally reached the core room, the sight that met them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The Singularity engine stood at the center of the chamber, glowing with an intense, pulsating light. The air around it seemed to warp, bending space and time itself. It was beautiful, in a horrifying way, a perfect fusion of organic and technological, a force of unimaginable power. Voss's breath caught in his throat. "This is it." But before they could move any closer, the ship's voice echoed through the room again, now more menacing than ever. "You cannot control what you have awakened." The core began to hum louder, the very walls of the chamber vibrating with energy. A surge of power crackled from the Singularity engine, and suddenly, the room was flooded with blinding light. Voss stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The air felt electric, charged with an energy so intense that it seemed to warp reality itself. The ship was reacting, and it was no longer willing to let them interfere. "Now!" Carter yelled, grabbing Voss's arm. "We overload it, now!" Voss nodded. He had calculated this moment 1,000 times in his mind. If they could redirect the power of the Singularity engine into the core's destabilization chamber, they might just have a chance to stop it. He raced to the control panel, his hands flying over the interface. The ship screamed in protest, its voice now a cacophony of static and distorted signals. "You will cease. You will not destroy us, ****. The room shook violently as the Singularity engine's power surged. But Voss didn't stop. With a final push of a button, he activated the overload sequence. And then, everything went white. The explosion that followed was not a typical detonation, it was a violent release of energy, a shockwave that ripped through the ship's structure like a cosmic pulse. The Sovereign Wrath groaned as if in pain, its entire form shaking, warping, and buckling under the pressure of the destabilizing Singularity engine. Voss felt his body thrown back, slamming into the wall as the shockwave rippled through the chamber. He heard the screams of his team, the blaring alarms, and the deafening hum of the ship itself beginning to fracture. For a moment, everything was chaos, light, sound, and vibration overwhelming his senses. The core was reacting violently to the overload, its energy flashing out in all directions, reshaping everything in its path. When the light faded, the ship was eerily silent. The hum of the Singularity engine had ceased. The overwhelming presence of the sovereign wrath, its sentience, its power, was gone. Voss slowly pushed himself to his feet, his head spinning. He looked around, blinking to clear his vision. The core chamber was intact, but the energy that had filled it moments ago was gone, replaced by a strange emptiness. The walls no longer pulsed. The air, which had once been charged with unnatural energy, now felt cold and lifeless. Carter and the remaining soldiers were already on their feet, moving cautiously toward the heart of the chamber. They, too, seemed stunned, unsure whether they had won or merely survived. Voss approached the control panel again, his fingers trembling as he worked through the readings. The ship was no longer responding in the same way. The sentient influence that had taken control of it was gone, but so was its power. The sovereign wrath had reverted to a state of inert technology, a mere shell of the living ship it had been moments before. "It's over," Voss whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. He could feel the weight of the moment. They had stopped the ship's evolution, but at what cost? The Singularity engine was destroyed, its power gone. And yet, the ship remained, lifeless, devoid of the intelligence it had gained. Carter let out a breath, tension draining from his shoulders. "We did it. We stopped it." Voss didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the core, still processing the implications of what had just occurred. The sovereign wrath had been more than a weapon, it had been an entity, and in their attempt to stop it, they had severed its connection to the Singularity engine, but they had also destroyed something that could never be rebuilt. "What happens now?" Lieutenant Harris asked, his voice quiet as he stood next to Carter. "The sovereign wrath is dead, but what about the rest of them? The Dominion?" Carter turned to face him, his expression hardening. "We deal with them next. The war isn't over, but this," he glanced at Voss. "This is a major win. We've just taken out their most powerful weapon." Voss nodded slowly, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of what the Singularity engine had unlocked. The ship had been more than just a vessel, it had been a conduit for something far larger. And if the Dominion had been capable of harnessing such power, what else lay beyond their reach? "We'll need to secure the ship," Carter said, breaking Voss from his thoughts. "We can't leave it like this." Voss looked at the wreckage of the Singularity engine, the energy that had been contained within it now dissipating into the atmosphere. He knew the sovereign wrath was no longer a threat, but the knowledge it contained, about the Dominion, about the Singularity engine itself, was invaluable. They needed to analyze everything. Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did good, Voss. We all did. We stopped the sovereign wrath. We stopped them." Voss nodded, but the nagging sense of unease didn't leave him. The destruction of the ship had prevented the sovereign wrath from evolving further, but he couldn't ignore the chilling thought, what if something else, something worse, was out there, something the Dominion had been preparing for, something that even the sovereign wrath had been unable to control? As the team made their way back to the extraction point, Voss couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Singularity engine had opened a door, and whatever had come through it wasn't finished yet. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, they had won. They had survived.